Ready yourself for destruction. Well, I hope that this is these guys that have to be ready for destruction. And I really like this slow guard that's just standing in the middle of this sea of fat and thin monks that simply refuse to die. But hey, lost flowers are always nice, and yeah, I cannot get this fireball. Thank you for asking. So, what we need to do first is to get this key beyond this little floor that only dog mode can access, so obviously we know what we're gonna do. Just in case that people have been wondering about the previous level where we saw a whole lot of monks and now we finally see regular enemies getting mixed into all of this, and yeah, we're gonna get an asbestos armor before we go into this little area over there. But yeah, the beginning level was no fluke because we're really gonna see pretty much nothing but monks for the entirety of this level. As far as different enemies are concerned and all of this level is better than the rest, although yeah, don't count on this being a recurring theme, and yeah, I almost forgot to go into this little secret. Since I'm in a very dangerous place, obviously I have to get God mode. But yeah, that's such a waste, because I'm pretty much gonna kill something like only 3 or 4 enemies, because I still have to get dog mode, so yeah, essentially it's nothing but a waste. Hey, what do you know, it's not like I expect good things from these power-ups anymore. I'm a defeatist in nature, so yeah. I'm not entirely sure, but I think you need God... Jesus Christ, I always get mixed up between God and dog mode, but yeah. I think you need dog mode here, considering that there's a million of them. So here we go, we have the gold key, and yeah, it's not like we're in a danger of running out of dog mode, because we're just gonna have to run back here if we want any. However, the furthest you get into the level, the more useless it will become, and yet, don't get this asbestos armor, because otherwise you won't be able to get to one of the secrets into this level. Why? You'll see later. So, in this one level, considering that right now there's nothing really eventful going on into this little hallway full of discs, whose sole purpose is pretty much just to block the monks' fireballs, so let's just make it so that you have a little more of a chance in order to get through this place, but yeah, instead we're gonna talk about the history of this game. So basically, Rise of the Triad started its life as an expansion pack for Wolfenstein 3D, and the full title for the game was supposed to be Wolfenstein 3D Part 2 Rise of the Triad. Yep, that's just quite the mouthful that we have going here. The story in the game involved basically a secret organization which was called the Triad, and which supposedly used Hitler as a puppet in order to make it so that they will be able to conquer the world. And after Hitler has been killed into the previous Wolfenstein 3D game, basically, they're just deciding to pull off their next step in order to end the world. And basically, you're the same guy than in the first game, and you need to kill everyone with a whole bunch of weapons. Oh boy, stories into those old games were very complicated. This was why I brought dog mode all the way here, by the way. It makes dealing with those monks far easier, because you can simply jump onto their head or just bark at them endlessly until the moon comes out and decides that you are not welcome. And yeah, this touch plate is kinda important for one of the secrets. Oh, poisonous gas, how did I miss you? Hey, at least getting the gas mask into this level was a lot easier than in the last time. Yeah, that was in episode 2, by the way, and yeah. The monks are completely immune to poisonous gas, considering that they're undead, but yeah. Hey look, another gas mask right here, just in case that you couldn't find one. And yeah, just in case that you couldn't find those, there's another one for the suicidal people. How fun. So once that you've pushed this touch plate here, you can go all the way back to the beginning of the level in order to find out one of the secrets. This is the kind of thing that you probably couldn't figure out unless you have access to the maps of the level, because who the hell will come all the way back here anyway? I mean, it's like a 1-minute walk, and yeah, the reason why I didn't get this armor, yeah, because it's impossible to take the elevator back. So, going back to this room, yeah, you remember the gas from earlier? Yeah. It doesn't even play any role into this level, because you don't even need to activate it in order to finish the level. And in fact, the only thing that the switch that trigger the gas does is open up a way to a gas mask. So not only this trap was already pretty gimmicky as it was, but into this level it's completely pointless. So yeah, gas traps really didn't have much of a good life into this game. Before I resume talking about the history of Wolfenstein 3D Part 2, well, first of all, here's a pretty cool thing that this level does. There's the silver and iron key, but this pillar can only be pushed once in one of the directions, so you have to choose which key you're gonna pick, because you're gonna end up in a different place, and it's impossible to get both of the keys, by the way, so we're gonna go with iron, because I figure that my good luck will make it so that this is the good key. So basically, going back to Wolfenstein 3D Part 2, enemy-wise, a lot of the enemies were basically just reskins from the original Wolfenstein 3D enemies, although there were some new IDs every once in a while. For instance, there were enemies that supposedly will run back in order to heal themselves if you damage them. But we also have these enemies, because, yeah, the original design notes for this game included those particular enemies, which means the Death Monks and the Death Fire Monks. However, in the original game they had a far more elaborate undead look, if only because they really had skull faces. They were basically like skeletons in robes, instead of having some sort of human figure like into this game, although into this one they really don't look like that they're really there. But yeah, that was the proper way to get into the area with the keys, by the way, because I took a secret in order to get there, and that was not the way you're supposed to do so. Other than that, one of the only new enemies that were introduced back then when this was still Wolfenstein 3D was basically the Triad Enforcers, which basically were supposed to look like the Episode 1 boss, only though that they had much lesser health in order to make it so that they will be regular enemies that will pop up every once in a while. However, most of the boss IDs that were brought back into Wolfenstein 3D Part 2 did survive into this game. And yeah, you need to push this touch plate in order to get to another secret all the way back there. But yeah, most of the bosses did survive. However, they had different names, but their functions were basically the same. The first boss, you needed to find a way to get into his room because it was completely sealed off. The second boss was another boss into a wheelchair of some sort, shooting missiles at you. There was also the third boss, which is basically the next boss that we're gonna meet. That's the boss of Episode 4. And finally, the final boss of the game was to be the Wolfenstein 3D Part 2 version of the enemy. Yeah, into the old design notes, the enemy was supposed to be the final boss into this game. And then overall, I really think that the enemy would have made for a much better final boss because, well, it's a lot more fun. But yeah, this was the optional area where you need to go, and yeah, there's a touch plate right here, which is a bitch to press if you don't want to get burned, but the payoff is worth it, 3 extra lives. So yeah, that's the silver door right here, just in case that you decided to take the other key. Both of the doors lead to the same place. It's basically you pick your obstacle course. The iron key leads to a much harder area, however the silver key won't let you any cool rewards. And finally, to close things up, this room is a massive mess of touch plates that you have to press. There's basically like 12 touch plates, and there's like 8 or 9 of them that need to be pushed in order to open the way forward. And since I don't know the ones that you need to press, I just end up pressing them all. So why didn't the game get released as Wolfenstein 3D Part 2 Rise of the Triad? Well, according to Scott Miller, they eventually received some sort of phone call from John Romero, which was pretty much saying, you cannot work onto this game anymore because it's Wolfenstein 3D, and well, fuck you, that's what. The general consensus for this sudden cancellation was because this game was not released, but was developed around the same time as Doom. Well, basically, they didn't want any kind of competition by having another game from a pretty successful franchise, so they were like, oh god, I'm gonna die. Okay, no, that's not how they went, but yeah, I was just talking about myself there. But since they didn't want any kind of competition, they wanted them to drop the Wolfenstein 3D name and brand. So that means that they pretty much had to drop all of the Germany and Nazi references, although, well, you can still see a whole lot of references to Nazi, especially like in the clothing of the enemies and all of this. That's why we call them pseudo-Nazis. So that's the story. John Romero made it so that instead of being a Wolfenstein 3D sequel, this will be a standalone game involving some sort of crazy death cult. Involving some sort of god that wanted to take over Los Angeles and brainwash the whole world. Thanks, John! Okay, let's get this video over with before it gets out of hand anymore. Coming up next, this is episode 4, Area 3, Crushing the Field.